What's going on, guys? Do with Dan back in the garage again. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the tools that we will need to complete the build. Don't worry, guys, I go through all the basic setup of most of this stuff. It's really easy. The only thing that's kind of worth watching really is the tube bender that I have over here, but we'll go into that in a second. If you guys don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to be building a motorcycle frame to have a custom chopper that I made myself. And I'm kind of taking you guys through the steps with it so you guys can potentially do it in the future too, even if you have almost little to no experience with doing anything mechanical like this. So with that being said, let's get started. There we go, now I got a t-shirt I don't care about. Now there's a big difference between tube benders and pipe benders, and there's a big difference between tubing and piping. And that's very important to know before you go into this. Piping is a lot less structural than tubing, obviously. That's why you don't use that black piping for building things. It's literally just piping. Tubing is a lot more structurally rigid, and that's why people make motorcycle frames out of tubing. I figured there probably shouldn't be any confusion between that, but that's something that, like me 5 years ago, would have known. Woodward was also nice enough to send out this banner. I fucking love banners. I can't help it, but banners like this I absolutely love. Now, even though that I got this all set up, it works pretty simple. This is you got your handle right here, and then you lock it in, and then you bend the tube. Of course, it's not bolted down, which we're gonna do now. I need to figure out a place where I can bolt this down to the concrete floor where it's not gonna be in the way when I'm using it, and at the same time, I should be able to just pull out the bolts and move it somewhere else in the meantime if I'm not using it. And that's kind of the idea. I want something that's temporary. But this is a rental house. That's a question I get a lot. Like, how are you gonna get away with all this stuff that you do when you move out? Well, what I'll probably do is I'll just fill the holes with caulk or something like that. So I just went out to Lowe's, got a couple of concrete anchors. Basically, you just drill these 5/8 hole, I think. Insert these little anchor points in the ground. And then once you screw these in, these fan out like that, creating an anchor point, and they won't come up on you while you're, bending tube or whatever. I hope that's how it's gonna work. We're gonna find out. I'm not sure where I wanna put it. When I'm gonna be working on the bike, I want to move the frame jig kind of in the middle so I have all this working space. I'm thinking like right here would be a good place, because that gives me a lot of room for tubes, because tubing is gonna be all over the place. Right here feels like a good spot. Move boxes out of here. So the tube bender itself is installed. I only use 2 brackets, mostly because I'm lazy. No, the true story is that my drill, I'll be honest, my drill is not handling drilling that big of a hole first. I probably should have stepped the hole first instead of just going straight in with a 5/8, like maybe start out with like a 3/8 first and then go with a 5/8, but I was like, I ain't got time for that. So I just ended up using 2 mounts diagonally across from each other. I mean, this thing's pretty stable. I'm not worried about it going anywhere. I've put all my weight against it, holding back on it, and it's not moving an inch. So that should be fine for now. If I feel like I need to buff it up later, I will and just put another mount in there. But I just didn't feel like my drill could handle it at this point. So yeah, we got a tube bender in place, and it's anchored in. But all I have to do is pull out the bolts, and then I can move this and put it away, so I can park my car back in here. So whenever I'm going to be working on the bike, I'll bring the frame jig to the middle of the room. I'll put this in place. That way I can bend tubing really quick. It'll take like, it's a 5-minute setup time. Move it from there to there, put the 2 bolts in, put that from here to there. It's good to go, ready to work on the bike again. So next we need to set up the welder. Now if you've watched my channel for any period of time, you've known that safety's never really been my #1 concern of anything. Matter of fact, there's only 2 types of safeties that I generally preach, and that's gun safety and eye safety. The highest number of accidents that happen in a garage or a workplace is eyes. Especially in a shop environment where you're grinding and cutting and welding, eye protection is very imperative. So I always recommend people use eye protection. Now aside from that, a lot of people saw my welding setup, saw that I just had the tank standing there, and a lot of people kind of lost their shit over it. I felt like the reaction was a little bit unnecessary because I did plan to do this anyway, but I decided to invest in a decent welding cart. Basically, it's got enough room for 2 separate welders or a plasma cutter, which I'm probably going to get here pretty soon. So I just invested in a relatively cheap and usable welding cart that I could chain my tanks down with. So we're going to assemble that real quick. Okay, actually that was pretty basic and boring, so I decided not even to record it. But I finally have tied up my welding cart. Everything's good to go on it now. It's a 180 HD. Everyone was bitching to me about the not chaining up my tanks, and now it's chained up. I'll be the first to say that this little cheap cart was incredibly overbuilt for what it is. Like realistically, every nut had like a locker washer. I mean, the thing's just ridiculously overbuilt. I'm not even worried about this thing at all. But this is something that I needed to invest in right here as well. So for this particular welder, some of them don't need it, but a lot of them do require a 220 plug. So I had to get a 220 plug installed, which is no big deal. This was important too. Since I was going to be wheeling this around my garage, I needed to have a long extension cable, so I invested in this. I think it's a 25-foot extension cable for a 220 plug. The thing was expensive. It was like 80 bucks for this extension cord. And I can just wheel it wherever I want to in the shop now, which is pretty cool. I've seen better days. I ain't got much to lose. So we got a pretty sweet tube notcher here. Alright, so the tube notcher's set up. They recommend that you mount it to your like workbench or something like that, but I figured I kind of want to remain this temporary. I don't want to have this bolted down all the time. I've got a pretty big vise here. It's a heavy duty vise. I mean, this thing is relatively strong, and there's really not a whole lot of pressure that gets put on this device anyway, so I figured that I'll just keep it locked in the vise whenever I'm using it, pull it out, and pull it in whenever I needed to. The way this tube notcher works is that you use your saw hole attachment right here. You just put on a metal hole saw, and then you power it by a drill back here, and then that twists it. Just really simple, but totally usable. And to make sure you have the proper angle, you have these little tick marks right here to tell you what degree you're at. And then you just adjust it to what you want, and then you tighten it down. Pretty sweet, dude. Probably the best bang for the buck. Then you just use this right here to lock down the tubing. It's good to go. I'll probably just be using these bimetal hole saws that Cobalt makes. They bolt right in. They're adjustable. It'll probably work. And then you just whoop. So now that we've covered the welder, the tube bender, and the tube notcher, we need to talk about some other minor tools that you're probably going to need, on top of things like torque wrenches and sockets, and an impact probably, and some minor other tools like sockets and wrenches and an impact, stuff like that. You're going to need something to cut tube with, or you need something to grind the tube with. Now, for the past 5 or 6 years, I've basically just stuck with this DeWalt Sawzall. It's been able to do the job for most parts. I don't recommend this for cutting tube, just because the cuts aren't as clean and it's hard to make a super accurate cut with a reciprocating saw like this. I'm working on getting a nice bandsaw or chop saw for this project, but in the meantime, this will probably do what I need it to do, specifically because I have this as well. This is also pretty important. You need the tools that you're gonna need. I just had this little DeWalt angle grinder. This is great too, because not only can you clean up grinds with this, but you can always put on a cutting wheel with this as well, and does a pretty good job at making some decent cuts. Now this wheel has seen better days. I should probably replace this with it before it fucking blows up in my face, but I'm also missing the safety shield, which I should probably put on as well, but whatever. So these are both important tools to have. I also recommend getting a pretty decent vise, just for various reasons. It's always a good tool to have in the shop or the garage, wherever you're at. I also have this bench grinder here on a little stand that my grandfather made back in the day. You've got a harsh grinding wheel, and then you've got a softer grinding wheel for making a little bit more cleaner grinds, I guess, for cleaning up different things. But so this does pretty good. I've got another one that I use for polishing as well. I also have a pretty decent air compressor too that'll probably get used from time to time. I've got some pneumatic cutting tools and cleaning tools that I'll probably use, but this isn't required. You can probably get away with that one just using electrical tools, but it's always good to have one. A drill, definitely required for this type of tool. A drill is definitely important for this. Ignore the fact that I used the concrete bit on my little hand drill. You should really get a concrete drilling tool, but I didn't have one, so I just used my hand drill and it did the job. You're definitely gonna be doing some welding, so invest in good welding gloves and a welding mask. A dog is not required, but it's totally recommended. I recently invested in one of these in electric impacts. This Milwaukee fuel has been fucking, did you really like that? This thing has been awesome. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Obviously, you're gonna need a frame jig as well. Now, if you don't know how to make one of these, if you wanna buy one or if you wanna make one, and you haven't seen my other video where we actually build this, I show you how to build this, click on this video that's right here in the description, one of the two, and it'll take you right to it and it'll show you how to build one of these. And like I said, just basic wrenches and just various tools you're gonna need: screwdrivers, hammers, Allen keys, anything that you use on a regular motorcycle, you're gonna probably need it. And this is probably the most important thing. I've talked about this several times now, eye protection. 10 out of 10, need eye protection. Just get a pair of glasses, I'm telling you, it's very important. So there's a full list of the tools you're gonna need in the description, but if you just wanna watch the video and be lazy, maybe get some popcorn or a beer, feel free. You are such a dog. Do you know you're a dog? Oh yeah, one more thing, Jackson. People want merchandise with you on it. Tell me in the comments below what type of merchandise you'd like with him. Do you want like a t-shirt with his face on it, or what? Most thumbs up comments gets a t-shirt made like that, so doggo. Alright, go quick though, Jax, get the fuck out of my way. I really want to say a special thank you to Woodward Fab, who hooked me up with the tube notcher and the tube bender. I'm definitely gonna be shopping with these guys again. There's a lot of different tube benders out there like this, and they have electric ones too if you don't feel like doing manual tube bending, but I really felt like the manual tube bender was the best bang for the buck. Again, if this is something that I want to do regularly, I'll invest a little bit more money into it, but I'm trying to see how little you can invest into making a motorcycle frame and still be able to make a motorcycle frame. So again, links for all the stuff that I've got is in the description. And I also said, I'm also investing into a better cutter like I've talked about. I also want to invest into a plasma cutter as well, because that'll be great for cutting out motor mounts and other bits of steel that I need for extra rigidity and stability. So that's something else that I want to invest in. So yeah, I've got a lot of cool stuff planned for this build. Kicks off sometime next week whenever the tubing comes in. The next episode you'll see from this is going to be me chopping up the Sportster 1200 for this build.